I think being mindful of what we're doing in the moment can be extremely helpful. And when you see yourself doing something that isn't helpful, don't admonish yourself for doing that. Just accept the fact that, oh, that's where my mind went. But that's just a part of what we are. We're not just our minds. We're more than that.
You work hard in your business. On the Profit by Design podcast, we ask the big question. What has your business done for you lately? Hi, I'm Dr. Sabrina Starling, the business psychologist, the author of How to Hire the Best, and your co-host on the Profit by Design podcast. Weekly, my co-host, Mike Bruno, and I bring you tips, tools, and strategies from our own experiences and from the experiences of our guests, who are entrepreneurial thought leaders and real-life entrepreneurs, all to support you in making intentionally profitable and sustainable business decisions to live the lifestyle you desire. At Tap the Potential, we know that you want to be freed from the constant demands of your business. In order to do that, you need a business that supports your life. The problem is you have a cash-sucking business taking over your life, leaving you frustrated and discouraged. We believe work supports life, not the other way around. We understand you're paying a team and you're still having to do it all. There should be accountability. It shouldn't be this hard, which is why through our proprietary coaching system, we help thousands of business owners just like you have more time for what's important to them and grow profit by 300 to 800%. Here's how we do it. First, take our assessment at tapthepotential.com/assessment. Next, meet with our success team lead to debrief your results. Then, join our Better Business, Better Life program. By the end of your first year with us, you will have more time for what matters to you and more money in your bank account than you've ever had before. So take our assessment at tapthepotential.com/assessment so you can stop working so hard for so little return. Take your life back. Profit Designers, today Mike and I are bringing you a very timely and relevant conversation with Monica Coleman about the power of our mindset and how we manage our energy, particularly during a time of disruption like we are all experiencing with coronavirus impacting us. Monica Coleman is the founder of Inside Information Coaching and Consulting and architect of the Limitless Methodology. As an athlete herself, Monica has always been intrigued by the link between mindset, performance, and leading a successful, satisfying life. Her work over the past 15 years with athletes and executives created a bird's eye view of the challenges inherent to high achievers in both their professional and personal lives. Monica's natural curiosity, her ability to inspire others, and her commitment to ensure her clients move from potential to success has made her a pioneer in the field of performance coaching. As a certified professional coach since 2009, Monica meets clients wherever they are on their journey, helping them to create a successful pathway to the lives they have thought were unattainable. Monica crafted the Limitless Methodology to apply the principles in a different setting and with a larger scope, enabling more people to unlock the top performer who resides within them. Her dream is for every individual she meets to better understand their true nature. Bearing witness to others' success and watching their transformation is the greatest expression of her true purpose in life. So, Monica, welcome to the Profit by Design podcast.
Thank you, Sabrina. I'm very happy to be here today with you and Mike and excited about what we might uncover during our conversation today.
Yes, I think we have a limitless conversation in front of us. Very timely and important topic here in terms of how we think about our own energy and manage our energy, especially during times when there's a lot of stress going on and confusion. So how can we show up as our best selves and really tap our potential? So Monica, I just want to dive in right there. And if you could share a little bit about what you are doing personally to stay, within good energy right now.
Well, and so, first I would start by saying that all energy has a right to exist. So anything that you're feeling, and there's no point in going to war with what is. I have a new definition of insanity. Insanity is no longer doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, although that's equally a wonderful definition of insanity. I think that insanity is going to war with what is. And right now we're dealing with a lot of what is. And we're not particularly ready for it because we weren't thinking our lives were going to change this way. And we weren't particularly prepared for it. So we're going to have emotions. We're going to have reactions. We're going to become not so what we call response-able. So we talk about responsibility in a little bit different term than we normally do. Responsibility normally feels like the weight of something you have to do. And we talk about having the ability to respond, which at this point in time, a lot of us are having emotions and they're more reactionary. And we have a lot of fear. A lot of people have a lot of fear about what this is going to look like over the course of the next, say, at least 8 weeks, and maybe beyond that, depending on what the course of this virus takes. So one of the things that we can do to help us move through this is to, first of all, understand that any reaction that you're having, it's normal. As you sit there, you're just the perfect sum total of every experience you've ever had. So there's not necessarily another way that you quote unquote should be, but there is a way that you can be. You do have the ability to choose your response to things, but that doesn't mean that we banish the parts of ourselves that are having a tough time. Because that's where the real magic, to some degree, occurs. If we're going to fundamentally change who we are on the inside, we're going to have to take a look at where those reactions come from and what we can do to change the underlying belief that creates. If you look at it, pretty much in every moment, we feel okay. I mean, we do. Right now, most of us, not all of us, there are some people who are very ill, but most of us are okay in this moment. And if you're one of those people who's okay right now, I think it's okay to stay in this right now and be okay. But that doesn't mean that your mind isn't going to jump out into the future. That's totally normal. We do a lot of planning, right? In our businesses and other things, we're used to doing that. But when we don't really know what the future is, and because the future hasn't happened yet, there really isn't any truth to anything we're thinking about. It's our own creation. And so I think being mindful of what we're doing in the moment can be extremely helpful. And when you see yourself doing something that isn't helpful, don't admonish yourself for doing that. Just accept the fact that, oh, that's where my mind went. But that's just a part of what we are. We're not just our minds. We're more than that.
I love how you're describing that. And especially as you started off with the definition of insanity, it really being the resistance to reality. And our reality is very different. And I am so aware that when we get into fear, it is not a helpful place to operate from, because that's where our thinking and our choices really narrow down and we get very limited in looking at opportunity. So as the business psychologist, I feel like my mission right now is to keep people as much as possible out of fear so they can access their higher level thinking and be able to see that, wow, I'm having a reaction based on fear. It's not necessarily about what's right now. It's about what I'm projecting, or it could be based on something I've experienced in the past. And we get to choose those interpretations. That's the choice that I'm hearing you point to. And what we tell ourselves about what's going on has a profound impact on the choices we make and the experience that we're going to have during this time.
That's, it's so true. And it was interesting. I was listening to your most recent podcast. And when I was listening to it, you talked about the fact that entrepreneurs have this tendency to, be high-fiving over 70-hour work weeks. And, that mindset is a creation, right? And it's a normal one, what's been there, and you're trying to break that down. And this is exactly the same process. So for your entrepreneurs who are listening to this, the skills that they exhibit while they're moving through this time in relation to health are the same skills that will serve them as they move back into their businesses when things begin to normalize. So as much as this is going to sound strange, the opportunity that's in front of us right now, all the growing that we do right now, will be incredibly valuable to creating anything that we want to create in terms of the future. So, all the things that you were already saying, they apply to this moment. They're as much a part of this moment. They're just being applied in different ways. It's part of why I think Limitless is such a great concept for people to, or a class, a course actually for people to come into, because it applies across the board. When you change fundamentally what you're doing on the interior, you change across the board. I don't show up to do the laundry as somebody different than shows up to go to work in business or that shows up on a golf course. I'm the same. I bring with me, the one thing that I bring with me to every role that I have in life is me. So if I'm going to do some work, we can do it internally. That's what your business is. And you're using people as entrepreneurs to help them comprehend that. And what I'm saying is everything I've already gotten from you is usable right here, right now, in this moment, on this topic, right?
Yes, I really appreciate you pointing that out, because this is going to make us stronger. The skills that we build to be resilient during this time are the control that we take over our thinking and our mindset, choosing a growth mindset versus a fear mindset. Growth is about looking at what do we have to be grateful for right now. Our health. Most of us are healthy. We have oodles of time with our family that we didn't have 2 weeks ago. And, we have opportunities. Midday, I'm taking breaks. I did a little mini picnic with my daughter outside 2 days ago at 2:35 or 2:40 midday. And then I went back to work at 4:30. Yesterday, I went for a long bike ride with her in the middle of the day. I don't have those opportunities normally. And so when we pay attention to what are the opportunities in front of us, what can we be grateful for? And how, the other thing that I see going on right now within the Tap the Potential family and community is a lot of people reaching out and checking on each other and connecting. And it's beautiful, because there is this awareness that everyone is feeling vulnerable, and it's okay to feel that way. Suddenly, it's okay to be vulnerable.
Yeah, there are so many lessons that come from a time like this. And I honestly, myself, have also found myself in varying points in my life. I think and I talk about this with my clients all the time, one of the times where mostly people would say to you, it's such a sad, hard time. I was very close to my grandmother, and she died a number of years ago, but at the age of 97, she had a wonderful life. And she cut pizza with scissors. She was like this amazing human being. And even as we were doing all the preparations for services and other things, I was able to really sit in the joy of her existence and my interactions with her, how it impacted my life. I spent an enormous amount of time with her as a child. She took care of me while my parents were working during the day. So I was able to really get to know her. And I have unbelievable memories from that time spent. And so even as we move through things that are very difficult, there's still the ability to look at the joy that's there. There's the joy in living. Even when life ceases, there's still the understanding of that. And I think that these are underpinnings, and those are much deeper things that we just don't spend a lot of time thinking or talking about. But when we're faced with something like this that really changes our paradigm, it's changing how we're thinking. In all likelihood, if we choose to allow it, it will change our way of being moving forward in varying ways, some of which are life enhancing and some of which may not be, depending on our choices as we go through this. So, I think that there's the ability, as you said, you brought up gratitude, which is a big piece of that. It's this understanding that life doesn't have to be good or bad. Life can be what it is. It's only good or bad when we interpret it. You talked about perceptions earlier, and that's the truth. So, essentially what's happening is there's this being that you and I are, and then all of these experiences come in and they create a perceptual lens for us. And that's how we determine in life what's good and bad, right? And so when we start judging like that, we can find ourselves in situations where we're creating energies that we don't necessarily want to create, because they don't serve us, right? It doesn't serve me to walk around being sad. It doesn't mean that I can't be sad. And if I am sad, it's okay for me to be sad, but I may not want to stay in that situation for forever, or I may not want to be unhappy for forever, or angry for forever, things that really just don't help my body at a time where my body is doing its best to keep me healthy. So, it's all of these things are intertwined, and it's a lot about, at a very deep level, about what you think about life, how you think that life really works, and not so much who you believe yourself to be, but what you believe you are. And so ultimately, when I work with clients individually and we really get deep into those things, that's where we go. But for those who are, at the beginning of this and feeling really off kilter based on everything that's going on here, it serves you to just understand that whatever you're feeling, you're allowed to feel. There's no, if you're vulnerable, you're vulnerable. If you're sad, you're sad. If you're scared, you're scared. Whatever it is, you can be whatever that is. But just know that you can make a choice from there for how you're going to view that. I think, even some of the survivors of Auschwitz and some of the other things we've seen over the years where people have talked about their experiences, people who survived some really traumatic things talk about that. They talk about how they chose. They chose to think differently.
Yes. And I remember Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. And that was my first encounter in graduate school with the power of mindset. And that rocked my world to recognize that here was someone in such dire circumstances, surrounded by fear, consciously, daily, moment to moment, choosing his mindset.
And it makes a difference. It really does. It makes a difference to your experience. And from what we know about how we impact others, it's so funny that we talk about social distancing, but at the same time, in some ways, we're getting closer than ever, which is what you were saying. We're physically remaining apart, but we are never energetically apart. We know that our smallest pieces all talk to each other. That luckily the quantum physicists have been out there showing all sorts of studies and learning things about things that we just don't know about yet because we just don't have a way to measure them. But what we do know is that we're related in ways that we can't comprehend all the time. But it's fair to say that when I walk into a room, the room has a feel based on who's in it and what's going on. And sometimes someone else walks into the room and they bring an energy with them. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not, but you can feel it before they even open their mouths or say a word. So we're definitely connected in a way that we don't really deal with on a daily basis. But if you start to think about that, we talk about is when we take responsibility and we use it, we have the ability to not only impact ourselves and our families, since we're all in our homes primarily now, but we impact others. Even this podcast today will, impact in some way. And we're choosing how we're showing up. And that's where our real power lies.
Yes. Mike, I know you have some questions for Monica, and I'm sure what she's saying is touching on a lot of things for you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Specifically, echoing and both of you have dug into around mindset. We talk about the importance of mindset, so many times and how important it is. And, even people that we're speaking to on a daily basis, you can certainly see that some people have a concerned but positive mindset. Other people are just filled with anxiety and fear, and their mindset is just so rattled right now that they're running out and getting, 50 cases of toilet paper, right? So there's a lot of extremes going on. One of the things that, it may be throwing a little tip out there to somebody who is struggling. One of the things that I read on one of your websites, which really resonated with me because I know that it was a change in my life when I thought about things differently, and this was years ago, but it reads, people change from static belief of who they are to a more dynamic understanding of themselves. And I'm not sure what context you presented that in, but I think that those words and that phrase or that paragraph can certainly help people today if they are struggling. Can you dig into that a little bit?
Sure. Thanks for asking that. It's primarily most of the learning that I did early on with this was sports oriented because I started golfing when I was in my 30s. And unfortunately, I'm much older than that now, or unfortunately, I know a lot more than I did when I was in my 30s. Let's not judge it, right? But so a lot of what I learned early on was that just because I started late didn't mean that I couldn't accomplish. And so as I moved through this and started having varying experiences in being an athlete, what I started to understand was that what I believed myself to be is this sort of static thing, right? So there's a quote unquote Monica. And then I realized that that's not so static. I don't remember how rapidly your cells replace themselves, but it's fairly rapidly in your body and you're really replacing on a daily basis. And if you go back to the understanding that when you were born, you were like a blank canvas. And I actually have a way that I help people to use a blank canvas and understand what the possibilities are. Because most of at this point, our canvases, depending on how old you are, have a lot of paint splattered all over them. But the truth of the matter is that we're always that blank canvas. We can always take something out that doesn't work for us and put something new on our canvas. And when you comprehend that you're not just one thing. And I had a client once, I'll never forget it. She was in her 70s and she came to me because she was still working and she wanted to be better at her job, which I was amazed by her. I still to this day Mary, if you're listening, that's you that I'm talking about. So she just amazed me by wanting to be better at what she did. And so she's a very deeply religious woman. And as I was speaking with her, I told her, I said, well, you're everything. She said, and she was kind of limited around something. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, well, you're everything that a human could be. And she said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, you're capable of anything that a human can do. And she said, no, I'm not. And I said, well, actually, yes, you are. And so I said, you're capable of being incredibly loving. And she agreed with that. And I said, you'd be capable of murdering somebody tomorrow. And she said, oh, I could never do that. And I said to her, I said, I'm not saying you would. And I understand that given your belief system, you wouldn't. But the truth of the matter is that we are capable of everything. And that's a very extreme example. But if you come to comprehend that you can choose literally anything and that all possibilities exist, all of them, every last one of them. What we're going through now with the coronavirus, it was a possibility that existed in the field. It's now presented itself, right? Now we have a lot more other things. We're kind of like waking up about what our possibilities are, right? So I think the bottom line here is that when we limit ourselves, which we do all the time because we were this perfect little baby that came into the world, we didn't have a name, we didn't understand our background or our heritage, we didn't have a religion, we didn't have any of the things that we've come to identify with. And in reality, that being is still who you are. That hasn't changed. You literally are limitless, and you can choose to use your life while you're here in any way that you choose to do it. And the question isn't, some of the question is, what will I do? But once we've decided what, it's not can I, it's like, what would it take? You know, that's the question to be asking myself right at the moment is, what will it take to make Limitless be bigger? What will it take to influence thousands of people? What will it take? Not being stopped by something that says, oh, I need this. Oh, I don't have that. Oh, I don't know this. I mean, all of the things that can get in the way when we start to create the lives that we want. So when I talk about we're not static, those beliefs that you have about who you are, those were all given to you. In some ways, you're not even responsible for them. What you have to, but you can change them. And that's really where your power lies, right? We've got this. We can do this. All we have to do is be aware enough and willing to look in the mirror, which is why I say don't go to war with what is. If you see something you do not like, change it. Don't go to war with it. Just change it.
So I want to comment on something because I know that many of our entrepreneurs listening right now are in a place where their business is very different than it was 2 weeks ago. And they feel as though the future of what they were expecting to happen this year is completely gone, and like, I don't know, there's a lot of fear and anxiety around that, and livelihoods and team members' livelihoods being impacted. One of the things that I know for certain, particularly after spending the 4 days that I did with our entrepreneurs here at Breakthroughs on the Bayou, that is a room full of resilient entrepreneurs. They have overcome massive struggles and pains and difficulties and challenges in years past. Everyone listening has that ability to be resilient, and that resiliency is what will help us to be limitless on the other side of this. Our businesses will be different and our lives will be different. And we get to choose what that's going to look like given the cards we're dealt, the circumstances we can't control. And when we pull on that resiliency, we do have that ability to create limitlessness in our futures and redesign what things are going to look like.
I agree. I think everything that we're discussing today should be helpful. It doesn't mean, as you said, there are certain cards that are showing up and we're just dealing with them, right? We're not necessarily choosing those, but we do get to choose our response to them. And understanding, as Mike was asking, that you're not static, that you're dynamic, that you have the ability to shift gears, to move forward. I think so many times we're caught, and a couple of the topics that I cover in Limitless are expectation and attachment. And clearly, at this point, most of us, myself included, we're attached to the life we thought we were going to have in the next 6 months. And all of a sudden that's changing. And for some of us in truly dramatic ways. So, letting go and dealing with what is. Again, we're back to not going to war with what is. This is what's here. So, okay, so what are we going to do with it? Some of it's being grateful for what we do have. Some of it's being grateful for anything we've been able to experience to this point in our lives. And some of it is forward thinking in terms of, well, what are the possibilities, the opportunities that are sitting in front of me right now? And, your bike rides with your daughter, perfect example right there. Great one.
So I guess this question's probably for both of you. So, there's certainly outside pressure, right? Where as a business owner, everybody's talking about there's going to be lost business. There's going to be this, there's going to be that, right? And of course, there is the fear of unknown, and we're not really sure what's going to happen. My internal processing of this whole thing is I am going to use this time to, quote unquote, take my 4-week vacation, right? I'm going to spend a huge amount of quality time with my family and take advantage of that time, which is completely priceless and ordinarily wouldn't happen. So that's one positive for me that I can't even put a price tag on. Number two, I'm looking at it as a way to, reset my mind, and not even reset it, but almost bolster up my mindset track, right? And just have some time to just reflect, make intentional decisions, plan, for the future. Just really, I almost feel like it is a snow day, right? And I'm taking advantage of that snow day or those extra days off to just work on myself and in my business. So I feel very fortunate that I'm in this mindset to be able to do this. But for people out there that are not in that mindset, what are some ways that they can even start? Like, I do talk to people that they're frantic, right? I mean, they literally, the sky's falling, we're doomed. I don't even know what to do. I can't even function as a human. So, what are some tips and techniques and maybe a starting place for somebody who is struggling that just needs to get pushed in the right direction?
Sabrina, you want to go or you want me to?
I'll go, and I'll address it from the entrepreneurial side. And then Monica, I would love for you to talk about it from the energy side, if you will. So Mike, first I want to acknowledge you. I am so tickled pink to hear you're doing a 4-week vacation in this and that you see that opportunity. That's beautiful. And I think for someone who is in that frantic place, a very simple place to start is to breathe. And it is so basic, but breathing deeply and getting the air flowing to our brains and the oxygen flowing to our brains. So belly breathing, not shallow breathing. Shallow breathing keeps our stress response high. So we need to do the deep breathing. And so when you're finding yourself, going into fear, just pausing and taking 5 deep breaths, counting them out, or even better yet, 10 deep breaths. The other tool that is incredibly helpful is the mindfulness app called Calm. And there's a lot of apps out there for mindfulness. Calm is one of the ones that I've had good experience with and has really helped me. Creating just that space between our thoughts and our reactions when we learn how to meditate and just slow down the thinking, because that's where all the fear gets going. Once we can get ourselves out of fear, and that takes a lot of practice. And Mike, you're speaking about somebody who is just highly revved up from anxiety and fear. So the hardest time to learn these things is when you're highly revved up. And it's also the most critical time. So again, these are skills that we're going to need to use now, and they will make us better when life is calmer and less unpredictable for us. The thing that I am acutely aware of for our entrepreneurs is now is the perfect time to build the assets in our business, the systems that we haven't gotten around to putting in place because we're running around putting out one fire after another. Well, guess what? We can choose to have those snow days, those 4-week vacation days where we decide, I'm going to work on the business, those things that I've been wanting to get around to. Monica, I heard you speak about that. You're going to use this time to develop the Limitless offer. I am using this time to dig into the books that I'm writing, the systems that we're putting in place in the business. It's an incredible opportunity to have some space. And again, Mike, going back to what you said, recognizing the opportunities we have to be with our family. And, for somebody who's saying, I don't ever see myself able to take a 4-week vacation, you're probably not taking a 4-week vacation on the beach. And you are taking 4 weeks to just be and be fully present. which is a beautiful thing. So Monica, how about from the energy side? What advice would you have?
Well, first of all, a couple of things. I'm going to put my entrepreneur hat on for just a second before I jump into that. And I would say exactly what you're thinking. My thinking as an entrepreneur is exactly what you're saying. I'm not going to work in the business anymore. I mean, although I do still have some clients obviously coming in for support, but I don't need to be running all these courses right at the moment. People's lives have been very busy. I was supposed to launch something last week, and I actually have put the meeting off twice for the parents to sign their kids up for something because I've determined that this just isn't the right time. That doesn't mean it won't be in the next couple of weeks, but there will be some opportunities in terms of my time. And I'm really excited about I'm going to stop flying the plane while I'm building it. I'm grounding the plane. And I'm actually going to build the plane and then we'll fly it. So I've kind of given up on this flying while I'm building thing. I've determined as an entrepreneur, I don't like that experience. And there are times when it's necessary, but I really don't think it is right at the moment. So in terms of the energy that's going to do that, another piece that I'll share with you, my husband is a money manager. So when the stock market does its triple somersaults thing that it's doing right at the moment, our incomes are impacted, right? Our income is impacted. And so I could feel pressure in ways that a lot of people are feeling that pressure because there will be real impacts on our lives. So energetically, what do? I stay in the moment. It's probably the biggest thing I can tell you is your suggestions for meditation are phenomenal. I find that meditation is a great way to start and end each day. It really gives you the ability to watch what your mind is doing. So one of the main benefits of knowing your mind is that you come to understand that you're not your mind. And part of the way you do that when you're meditating is to think about, well, if I ask you, Sabrina, how are you? You would say, I'm fine. And then I could ask you, well, who knows that you're fine? What part of you is telling me that you're fine? What is that thing that observes everything? Right? And so that's your consciousness, it's your awareness, it's your ability to be able to be the person that's experiencing as well as this other part of you that's observing everything that's going on. And meditation is the practice of that. Because you're observing the mind, which is by far and away the thing that don't get me wrong, our minds are really useful for certain things, but man, we shouldn't be relying on them as a barometer for whether we should be doing something or not doing something, because the truth of the matter is a lot of times they're not particularly helpful when it comes to that. The mind can really lead you astray because it can get afraid and all of the things you've been talking about today. So separating that through meditation is very important in order to create a higher level of energy, which then allows you to have access to potential that you might not have had otherwise. And so in terms of nitty-gritty ways to do that, the biggest thing is to be aware. When my energy is, we call it getting in the catabolic canoe. So when my energy is becoming negative, which is catabolic energy, and don't get me wrong, not that negative energy can't be useful. If a tiger's chasing me, I want to get out of the way. So there's no doubt about it. But if we're feeling like a tiger is chasing us every day because we're afraid of the coronavirus, we're harming our immune system's ability to keep us safe anyway. So we're not doing any favors inside of our body, and we're also significantly limiting our mind's ability to see what opportunities are there because we're in fear mode. So in terms of how I do that, the first thing is to just simply be aware. When you're feeling something, sit back for a second and go, oh, wait a minute, what's that? That's a surprise. I'm afraid. Well, if I go hook, line, and sinker for my mind's story about what's going to happen in the future, now I'm into the fantasy of the whole thing, right? I'm creating what is essentially a movie in my mind of the future. And that doesn't serve me. In this moment, I'm in my house. My sons are living with us. My husband is here. Everything is fine. We're all together and nobody's sick. Factually, that's what's occurring. The more you go back to the facts, become aware of anything that's not a fact in your current life, the easier it will be to just let it calm down. It doesn't have to be so big. And that's a skill. It's, again, another skill that we can be working on. What is going on inside me right now? And not so much from a psychological perspective of where did that come from, although you could do that work and it's very valuable work. Just even knowing that it's there is the start, right? And then probably the next step after that is what we talked about earlier, being accepting of whatever it is that you're feeling. I always say that if you have awareness without acceptance, it's like playing a game of football. You better have a helmet and pads, or it's not going to feel very good. So when you have awareness, you become aware of all these things that are going on inside of you. If you personalize that and start owning all of that and thinking, oh, why do I feel this way? And all of a sudden we got out the wet noodle and we're thrashing ourselves with it. That's not what I'm talking about. The awareness of the feeling is great, but then you need to heap on top of that a bunch of acceptance. And even beyond that, I would say love, self-love. Just, of course you would feel that. That's what you learned. We talked about that blank canvas, and, we've thrown a lot in there, and most of which you were given. You didn't even say, well, let me be X, Y, or Z. Let me think this way. You just learned to think that way when you're young. So consequently, you're carrying all this with you. And when you become aware of that, you really are amping up your power. So if you think of yourself as on a power meter, your power is going to go way up. I always think of when we were in science class, we were testing electricity and we were combining things, and there was this little meter thing that would jump back and forth. And so I see that meter going on. And when you become aware, you really do increase your ability to have access to all of that power. You become far more powerful. There's a good friend of mine who runs a program to help kids learn about sexual abuse in the grade schools. And it's called the Power Project. And the whole point is to have kids be aware of what it is to lose your power. And so this is not something that we generally have been teaching our young children, but to have them understand that when they give up their ability to choose, like right now, we're not in charge of coronavirus, right? But when we give up our ability to choose, we then give away our power. So when you are aware, when you are loving and accepting with yourself, then you can move into making some conscious choices. But if you aren't those things, then it's hard. So
I would really want to touch on the self-love and self-acceptance, because one of the things that I often hear as I am coaching entrepreneurs is that harsh inner critic. And that harsh inner critic who looks at what we're doing, what we're thinking, and the results that we're getting right now in the moment, and judges. And what always stops me in my tracks is when I ask an entrepreneur, would you talk to your child that way? And, kind of the look that comes across the face like, oh, no, I would never talk to my child that way. Would you talk to your best friend that way? No, I would encourage my best friend. I would share acceptance and support. That awareness, that inner critic can get going, and fear drives that inner critic to really take off and run rampant. One of the things that you were talking about that really caught my attention is what happens to us, the choices that we make in the moment to survive are survival choices, and they may not serve us long term. And so what I talk about a lot with entrepreneurs is the survival trap, that in our businesses and personally, we are wired to look at what do we need to do to survive. Those survival choices can get us through the moment, but they can take us very far off course of where we want to be. So one tool that I would encourage everyone listening to think about is this is an event. This coronavirus and what is happening is an event. It is not a long-term situation. There will be impact and fallout, but some of it may be long-term. But this is an event. And 3 years from now, we're going to be looking back on this. And what is it that you want your life to be like 3 years from now? What is that future that you're wanting to create? We may not know all the how of how you're going to get there, but when you're really clear on what that experience is and not material, I would really encourage people to stay away from material things. But how do you want to be experiencing life 3 years from now? How do you want to be experiencing life today? And look at the choices that we're making from day to day and keep that vision in mind, because we want to be making the choices in the now that move us closer to the experience we want to be having 3 years from now. And one of the things that I want to offer is at Tap the Potential, we have created strategy sessions, one-off strategy sessions for entrepreneurs who are struggling with what are the choices I'm facing now? And I want to make good choices that are strategic, that serve me long term as I'm having to mitigate the impact on my family and my business and my team members from coronavirus. So we are offering these strategy sessions, and anyone who would like to have one of those with a member of the Tap the Potential team can access that at tapthepotential.com/strategy.
Sabrina, I think what you just said about what do I want to be experiencing? One of the things, and this is for all times, not just coronavirus time, but one of the things I talk to clients about all the time is, here's the thing, when you leave this earth, you're not taking anything with you. So you will have had whatever experiences you've had. And I think it's really important to focus on the experience. That's what we get out of life.
And we're totally in control of those experiences every moment, and we get to choose those.
We do. And it's hard. Don't get me wrong. We're going to have emotions and things. It's like, well, wait a minute. I didn't want to be experiencing this right this moment. That's okay, right? But you can, as we've been discussing today, you can choose. And I think it's important that we understand that we can. And I agree with you about looking at it more of life and total experiences, not so much materialistic.
Yeah. So I know you are developing Limitless. Would you like to take a moment here and talk to us about what is going to be in Limitless and what we could expect?
Sure. Limitless was born in 2018, and I've run it several times since then and have been using it with varying clients, actually, using the content. It was designed originally to help people move past their limits, because I understood that potential exists, but it's not really accessible to most people because their minds are getting in the way. So it came about because I've actually had 2 flow experiences in my athletic experience. I had 5 birdies and 6 holes in golf. And then I had another flow experience skiing when I was at the top of a mountain and caught in a cloud and couldn't see 3 feet in front of me. And in both experiences, and by the way, I was also witness to another flow experience when Michael Jordan was still playing for the Chicago Bulls. My husband's been a season ticket holder for years. He finally put me on the season ticket holder, put my name on the season ticket. So I knew it, like 12 years into our marriage, I'm like, oh, he's going to keep me. But anyway, so I was a witness to Michael Jordan having 6 3-pointers in the first half of a basketball game. I was there for that particular game. And so what I learned by that was that there is a limitlessness to us that most of us have felt at one time or another, but that we're not accessing on a regular basis. And so Limitless is taking a look at all of the things that interfere with that. And what I've done with it now is I'm starting to segment it, because I had people from all different walks of life with all different goals in mind when they came through the door. And I found that it's a little bit easier to talk to groups of entrepreneurs, or talk to groups of people who are in relationship transition, or talk to a group of golfers who are adults, talk to a group of teen golfers. So I'm segmenting it in many different directions right at the moment. And so by the fall, I'll be running numerous subsections of Limitless. But at the moment, if anybody would like to have a 30-minute strategy session with me, I actually give away a 30-minute consultation with any client to begin with. So I wanted to go ahead and offer that up, that people, I obviously have a limited number of slots that I put aside every week for coaching clients and then for these types of appointments. But I'm very happy to help anybody who feels like they're a little bit stuck out of coronavirus, and certainly would welcome them to our family. Although I have to be honest with you, I'm not running Limitless because I've just decided that I've grounded my plane. So I won't be running it until the fall, but I very much like to help people to the extent that I can, either individually or even just in a free consultation.
Thank you. So what is the best way for someone to connect with you for that?
So my calendar, I have a public calendar that people can sign up for. It's done through Acuity, and I believe that we will be posting that in with the information that we have on the podcast today. And then in addition to that, you can also reach me at my Facebook page at insightsinformationcoaching.com. So if you look that up on Facebook, you will find my page. And I also sent a link, so I'm sure that will also show up in our podcast notes.
We will get all of that in our show notes. Mike, do you want to take us out of here?
Yeah, I just want to thank both of you for sharing so many of those insightful tips. I think, that's certainly going to help a lot of people. And then my own personal request for everybody is just to limit the spiral from looking at social media too much and letting it drive your mindset or your thoughts or your feelings. Really just try to stay true to yourself and stay grounded. And, just work on yourself through this difficult time.
Thank you for that very, very poignant reminder. My best tip on that is check the news from one or two reliable news sources midday, not first thing in the morning, not in the evening, and check in on social media once a day, midday, and limit that also. And I know that's odd since we're talking about limitless, but when it comes to limitless, we really need to be in control of our mindset and where our thinking goes. So very good pointers. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Monica. What an inspiring and so relevant conversation today. I'm glad we made this happen.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And by the way, you're not talking about limits, you're talking about choices. And those are absolutely fine to make.
Yes. Good, healthy choices. All right. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
If you're like most business owners, you have a cash-sucking business that's taking over your life. After the first year in our Better Business, Better Life program at Tap the Potential, you'll have more time for what matters to you and more money in your bank account than you've ever had. Get started. Take our assessment at tapthepotential.com/assessment. Thank you for spending time with us today. Join our conversation in the Profit by Design podcast Facebook group. Share your thoughts on today's episode, ask us questions, and let us know what you want to hear about next. Visit our website at profitbydesignpodcast.com to access resources from our sponsors and tools we've created for you. Subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening to right now. There's a subscribe button right there. Go ahead and hit it so that you always get a notification when we release a new episode. And finally, share our podcast with a friend if you know a friend who would enjoy it. Thanks again for listening. This is real life business. Keep your chin up, keep moving forward. You got this.